Hello everyone. So let's start with the training, with the session, sorry. Okay, so let's continue. So we saw what is fabric, why fabric, we saw how to create a workspace in fabric. So now what we're going to do is we are going to try and understand how to use the fabric service. What are the different items that are present in the fabric service? So we will just focus on the demos here. Okay, and we will try and wrap up the session as early as possible because it's a weekend. So naturally, we want everyone to we want this to be done early. Shubham, coming to your question that you have put in the chat, okay, that particular thing, basically, let me tell you what is one leg. Let me explain that to you once again. See, it's not a place that can be used for querying or analysis of the data. Just consider one leg as a storage. Okay, consider it as a storage, and it's just unifying the data. Whether you store it in a lake house, you store it in a warehouse, or you store it in an event house, just wherever. So what happens? It at times we create multiple copies of that data in that same storage. Okay, so we don't want that. We want to avoid that problem. Okay, so whenever you are working on, let's say you are working with SQL analysis. Okay, you have a data in the table, right? And you want to query. So for that, you will use the warehouse. You will not be working on the one lake. You will be working on the warehouse. Okay, so what will one lake do? It will just store the data that you have uploaded in the warehouse. That's it. It's just going to act as a storage. So you're not going to query it or anything. Querying will be done in the warehouse. That's what One Lake is doing. It's just centralizing, unifying your data. Just keep that in mind. Whereas if you're querying or you're talking about query, it is just doing that. Okay. So now let's go ahead and understand the first component in the fabric service. That is the lake house. Now, what is a lake house? Let's understand that. So a lake house is nothing but a combination of the data lake with the data warehouse. So it picks up the lake aspect from the data lake and the house from the data warehouse. Okay, it will pick up that aspect and it will the combination. That means it is nothing but a data lake which has the capabilities of analyzing the data using SQL commands. Okay, that's the job of a lake house. It is bringing you the capabilities or the best of both worlds. That is the data lake. On top of that, a data warehouse. So when we work with semi-structured data or you have unstructured data and you have to analyze it, it is always better to go with the lake house. So the primary engine, because everything, like I said, works on compute, you require compute. So over here, the primary compute that is used is the Spark engine. So here you will be making use of the Spark engine in order to analyze the data in the lakehouse. So the engine that will be used will be the Spark engine. Now, if I have to perform the analysis, I have to analyze the data using the Spark engine. I can use the notebook item. So lakehouse is the item, but if you have to analyze the data that is stored in the lakehouse, right, you will have to use a tool. You can use the notebook. You can use the SQL language also to analyze the data. Okay. Now, when we create a lake house in Fabric, there are three things. Okay. Just before we understand those three things, now in a lake house, because it has a capability of a data lake, right? It is a capability of a data lake. So here you will be loading the semi-structured, unstructured data. I've already written here. But when we work with tables, so here on a data lake, when we want the asset properties, okay, on a data lake, if I want asset properties, I hope everyone is aware about what is asset, right? I hope everyone is aware about ACID, which stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, right? So if I want, because here in the data lake, it's what is a data lake? A data lake is nothing but, again, it's like a repository, it's like a storage where you can dump in any raw data that you want, whether it's a CSV file, text file, it's a JSON, XML, any file format. Okay, even your audio, video, images, okay, semi-structured, unstructured, structured data, but in the format of file. Okay, that repository is called as a data lake. So if you have to access the recordings, guys, you will have to you will have to subscribe to our YouTube channel in order to receive the recording of this session. So if Ria is there, Ria, can you share the link for our YouTube channel if you're listening to me? If possible, can you just share the link to our YouTube channel? And if she doesn't, I will share it in some time. Okay. So ACID, let me very quickly explain to you. ACID stands for atomicity. I already have a diagram. I'm not going to actually spend time in creating one. So let me just open that. Yeah. So when we talk about acid, okay, that is the atomicity. Okay, so basically these are certain properties that have to be followed by a database. Okay, a database has to, okay, these properties are something that are compulsory or a mandate for a database to follow. If it doesn't follow, okay, it is not, I mean, it's not a database then. Okay, so generally, uh, let's say we are doing some banking transaction. I have to send money to someone, okay, to a person's account, and I owe that person some 5,000 rupees. So I have to send or transfer. So you either use the net banking or you use the, what do we say, or you use the Google Pay, right? We all use some UPI channel through which we can send in the money, right? So when you're doing these transactions, okay, let's say you are transferring the money. So let's say I have to transfer the money to Shubham, okay, and I owe Shubham 5,000 rupees. So when I'm doing the transaction, okay, either through the net banking or through any of the UPI payments, that transaction that is happening can either be a success or it can be a failure. Nothing in between. There is no draw. There is nothing called as draw. Either you lose or you win. Okay, or that entire transaction that is there, it is either a success or it is a failure. Nothing in between. That means money is transferred to him or money is not at all transferred to him. Okay, and that property is ensured by the atomicity property. So the atomicity states that a transaction, so whenever you are writing a query, that query is either a success or a failure. Whenever you write the query or execute or you log any like when you place an order on Amazon, either the order is going to be placed or it's not going to be placed. There is nothing in halfway, correct? So that property is called as atomicity. Okay. Now, The next property, that is consistency. Now, what does consistency states? So let's say I told you that I have to transfer Shubham. I have to, I have to pay Shubham 5,000 rupees, right? So let's say before I do the transaction, right, in my account, there is 10,000 rupees. Okay, in my account, there is 10,000 rupees, and Shubham has 5,000 rupees in his bank balance, or is his bank balance. So, what is the total before I'm doing the transaction? It is 15K, correct? The transaction before I before I do the transfer of the money from my account to Shubham's account, the amount is the total of our bank balance. I'm so sorry. The total of our bank balance is how much? It is 15,000, right? But now I am doing the transaction. Let's say it has transferred, the atomicity clause is complete, right? The atomicity property is fulfilled, right? Now I have to see whether that money has actually been transferred or not. So over here, before I did the transfer, my total was 15. Now how much did I transfer? So earlier I had 10K in my account. After I transfer, I will have 5K, correct? My account will have 5K. And Shubham, which had 5,000 earlier, will now have a total of 10,000. So after I did the transaction, can you see the total will remain the same of our two accounts? That is 15, right? 15,000 is the total, that is 5 plus 10, right? Or earlier it was 10 plus 5, right? So this property where your sum of the amount, so it shouldn't be that you have committed some changes and they are not being, I mean, before you did that, the data was something else, and after you did, it is not at all matching. So whenever we talk about, so this property where the sum of amount before it got transferred, because it shouldn't be that I have said 5,000 and 6,000 is getting transferred, right? And in Shubham's account, it is showing 10,000, but from my account, it is the amount that is gone is 6,000. So what will happen? Where is that 1K that is gone? So how is the data consistent? Right? The data is not at all consistent. So over here, whenever you are doing a transaction, before you do a transaction, before you make any transfer, right? The sum that you send, the sum of the amount before the transaction and sum after the transaction is done should be the same. And this is what consistency states. Okay. So consistency ensures that whenever you are doing any transaction or from one valid state to another, there is accuracy of your data. It shouldn't be, like I said, you have specified 5K, but 6K is getting transferred, right? And it is just showing 10K. But from my account, 6K was deducted. So that is called as consistency. Then we have isolation, right? Now, what does isolation mean? So here, when we are doing certain transactions, we have a lot of steps that we need to perform, right? There are a lot of steps that happen in the background, maintaining the integrity of the transaction. So when you're transferring any money, the first thing is you have to log into the net banking account. Then second is you will enter the bank details or you will enter the number, right? When you're doing a GPay payment, okay? So you are paying through GPay, right? You will have to give somebody's number, and then you will have to give some OTP or PIN or etc. So these are steps that are happening that are happening. So let's say you have multiple, or when these, or let's say when you are using the Google Pay, at that same time there can be many people who might be making some transfers, right, using the Google Pay account or the Google Pay service. So whenever this is happening, okay, or I'm using the net banking and I'm doing the transfer of the money from different net banking. I am doing from one bank, from my bank. There is another person who belongs to is using the same bank and is doing a net banking, or is using the net banking as doing and is transferring the money, right? So it shouldn't be that when we are doing these transactions, his and mine are interfering with each other. Only when his is over, will I will be able to transfer, or when mine is over, he will be able to transfer. Right? That doesn't work. We can do multiple transactions at a same time. And if I have to ensure that these transactions do not interfere with each other, maintain the integrity of that transaction, okay, keep them isolated with each other. Okay, for example, we are using Amazon for purchasing a lot of products. It's not that I am the only one who can use Amazon at one time. You, Shubham, can also use it, right? Even Ria can use it when I am also using Amazon, right? So here, whenever you are working, whenever you have to do whenever you have concurrent transactions happening at the same time, at the parallel time, then that does not have to interfere with each other. And that property is ensured by the isolation property. Then the last property is durability. Now, what does durability mean? It guarantees that once a transaction is committed, when you place an order, it will remain committed, right? It will be executed. It will take place unless, or let's say, um, or you place an order, and while placing an order, there was a system error that occurred, but your order was placed, right? Or you execute a query, the query was executed, the data changed, right? Or let's say, for some reason, you go to the ATM, right? And in the ATM, let's say the system is down. So durability ensures that whenever you have such issues, it is handled well. Okay, system errors or internet connection errors, something like that. Okay, whenever there's a failure, your transaction in that scenario should be committed. This is what durability guarantees. So it will not let go of the transaction. Okay, ensures that the completed transactions. Okay, it means whenever you place an order or you have done the net banking, okay, you have paid somebody through GPay. So it will ensure that if you have completed that transaction will not be lost. It will be first committed, and then even in the event of failure, it will work. Okay, it should remain committed. So whenever the system goes down, it shouldn't be that you have placed an order and you don't receive the order, right? It doesn't happen because you have already placed the order. The system goes down, it took time to retrieve, but you will get the order. And that is what durability states. Okay, so once you commit on a transaction, it guarantees that it remains and it does not fail even in a system failure. That works only on the completed transactions. Okay, so this is what basically durability is, and these are the asset properties. So now let's say I want to apply these asset properties. So generally, asset properties are something that work on OLTP workloads, or we call it as uh, online transaction processing, right? That is what is the OLTP workloads. So generally, OLTP workloads are managed by databases. Like when you are placing an order on Amazon or any e-commerce website, or you're booking a flight, you're doing some net banking transactions using Google Pay, etc. So that is run on a database generally. Okay. So when we want these properties to be applied on a data lake, so that a data lake works like a database sort of thing, then that is called as a delta lake. The lake that gets created, a data lake with asset properties, is called as a delta lake, and the table that you create inside it is called as a delta table. Okay, that is what is basically a delta table. So if you want relational, not relational schema, but relational sort of capabilities, the asset properties on the data lake, then you use the delta lake, which has a table stored in it, which is called as the delta table. Now, when we work on a lakehouse, so lakehouse has two formats. It has two formats in which you can work. One is the file format, and second is the table format. Okay, second is the, I'm sorry, table format. So these are the two formats in which you can work. But when you work in the lakehouse on a table, okay, the schema of that table is going to be delta. The schema of that table is going to be delta. Okay. Now, like I said, lakehouse is nothing but a combination of data lake and a data warehouse, which uses the Spark engine and lets you analyze the data using SQL commands or SQL capabilities as well, right? So over here, when you create a lakehouse, there are three things by default that get created. It's not something I create. It is by default that is created. So the first thing that gets created is the lakehouse itself, which is a data lake that gets created. So if you have to manage files and the delta table, you can use the lake house, which acts like a data lake, okay, where you can load the data from where you can load the data in a file and change that to a delta table and manage the delta table using the Spark engine. So keep in mind, delta table is something that is managed in the Spark on top of the Spark engine only. Okay. So the first thing that will be created by default is the lakehouse. The second thing, because it's a lakehouse, we want to write SQL commands. We want to work with SQL commands, right? We want to write SQL queries in order to analyze like how it works in a data warehouse. You want to, you want that same thing, but on top of a data lake, then that, okay, if I have to use that on top of the lakehouse, then it creates a second point, which is called as the SQL analytics endpoint. Okay, it creates, which is the data warehouse of the lakehouse. So if you want to do SQL analysis, simple SQL analysis, you can use the SQL analytics endpoint to do that. Then the third thing that gets created by default is a semantic model. Now, what is a semantic model? It's a model that is used for reporting, for visualization of your data. So this particular model will help you visualize the data, will work like a Power BI model. So this is a Power BI semantic model. You can use this. So it's a default thing that gets created. So you'll get the name also like this, semantic model default, which will say that now when you load the data into the lakehouse, so let's say you want to use that data only and you want to visualize it, that very data, but you want it in the terms of Power BI. You want to analyze it in context to Power BI. So over here, you can use the semantic model to do that. So whatever file you upload in the lakehouse, okay, that same file will be available to you as a semantic model. So these are the three things that get created when you create a lakehouse in Fabric. So let's see very quickly, we'll do a demo on how to create a lakehouse. So here I'll come to my workspace. And in my workspace, I'm going to click on the new item in order to, so if you have to create any items in the lakehouse, sorry, in the workspace, you have to click on the new item and you can create those items. So here you can see they have categorized the items. So if you have to get data, if you have to store data into the one lake, okay, if you have to prepare the data, that is perform transformations, cleaning, you can see it as categorized. If you have to analyze, train, create ML models, you can even use to track the data, create or visualize the data. You can see you can do all of this over here. You can select whichever item you want. So here I'll go with a lake house. And I'm going to give it a name. So I'll call this as, just click on create. So the view that we will see when the lake house is open. So this current view that we are seeing is called as the Lake House Explorer. Okay, it is called as the Lake House Explorer. So you can see your Explorer. So that is why this is called as Lake House Explorer. And within that, if you see, we have two formats in which we can work with the data. So here it is the file format, and second is the table. So keep in mind, because this is a data lake, and when you work with a data lake, you always work with a delta table. You don't have the relational schema here. If you have to work with the relational schema on top of the lake house, then you will use the data warehouse, that is the SQL analytics endpoint. Okay. So now over here, if you come to the workspace, you will see three things that get created. And to that lakehouse itself, two things got created. One is the lakehouse, as I said, which is nothing but like the data lake that we have. Second is the semantic model default. So like I said, if you have to visualize the data using Power BI, okay, using the Power BI application within the Fabric service, then you use the semantic model. Okay, so you get that default. So whatever data now you load in the lakehouse, okay, that will now be converted to a semantic model automatically. So whatever data you load, so automatically it will use it as a semantic model, and you can now use it for visualization. Then the third thing that gets created is a SQL analytics endpoint. So this SQL analytics endpoint will help you write SQL queries, right? Will help you work with SQL or writing SQL queries. But there is a difference here. Okay, if you see, if I click on the new item, and if you see here, we have the option to create a warehouse also. Then why do we have this SQL analytics endpoint? So I will definitely talk about the difference between the SQL analytics endpoint and the data warehouse. So the next demo that I will show you all also will be a data warehouse. So now let's go ahead and load data into this lakehouse. So if I have to load the data into the lakehouse, there are various ways in which I can load the data. One is I can use my local system, and from my local system itself, I can load the data into the lakehouse. I can use some sample data that is already been given. Then you can use the data flow. Now, what is a data flow? A data flow is nothing but a transformation tool that is used to transform the data. Okay, because like I said, we have to clean the data, we have to transform the data, right? So if I have to do the transformations, I have to make changes before loading it into the lakehouse, I can make use of the data flow. So it's like a graphical tool that is given. Okay, there is, so like I said, there can be non-technical people who would want to transform the data, clean the data, right? So for them, this particular tool has been created. Okay, this particular tool is created so they can use the graphical interface and they can change the data. You can use a data pipeline, you can use the notebook to ingest the data using code. You can ingest the data into the lakehouse. You can use event stream. You can use the real-time analysis. So event stream, we will see what it is in some time. We will be focusing on that as well. So now let's just see. So another way, a very good way of also loading the data into the lakehouse. Okay, and it's a very important feature of the Fabric service or OneLake, I would say. It is called as the shortcut feature. Now, what is a shortcut? Let's understand that. So over here, if you see when I have to load the data, I need to load the data once, right? Into the lakehouse, some data I need to load in, correct? Over here, I would need to load some data. So over here, if I have to load the data, I could use the data flow, I can use the data pipeline, I can use event stream, I can use my local system. But here, this data that we are loading, a single copy is getting loaded. At least once you have to load it, right? from either of the sources, on premise, or it's coming from pipeline, or it's coming from data flow or event stream. So here you are basically one copy at least you will have to load into your one lake. Either you use the lake house, you use the warehouse, or you use the event house, right? Let's say, okay, to the lake house, you don't want to copy the data, but you still want to access the data. I'll repeat. Let's say I don't want to copy the data once or even load the data once, right? But still I want to access the data. Let's say the data is coming from some external cloud storages. Okay, we have, let's say, Amazon S3, we have Amazon compatible, S3 compatible. Let's say we have Google Cloud Storage. If you've worked on Power Platform, so Power Platform has its own storage that they call as the Dataverse. So let's say you have two workspaces over here, right? We talk. So here, if you see within the marketing capacity, okay, you create a tenant. Like I said, with every tenant, you get one lake created, and within that tenant, you can create workspaces depending upon the capacity that is allocated to you, right? Depending upon the capacity. So let's say this is your one lake. Let's say this is your one lake, and in the one lake, so let's say this is your marketing capacity, and in that you have created two workspaces. So this is your product, this is your product workspace, and you have another workspace created, which is the pricing workspace. So let's say in the product workspace, you have created a lake house, and even here you have created a lake house. Okay. So over here, you have these two workspaces. They are a part of the same one lake, right? Whatever data they load. But if I have to see, okay, the data, and these are the two workspaces that are there. So probably not all will get the access on top of the workspace. Okay, so people who belong in the marketing team but work with the product, they will have limited access, and that will be only to this product workspace. So they will not be able to see the data of the pricing workspace or the data in the lakehouse that has been loaded. Okay, they will not be able to access that because they don't have the access over here. Okay, so let's say they still want this data, but they don't want to copy the data into their product lakehouse. They want to see the data, they want to access the data, but they don't want to move or copy the data into their lakehouse. So over here, Microsoft has created a feature which they called as the one lake feature. Sorry, which is called as the shortcut feature. Now, what does shortcut mean? So shortcut will help you, okay, not copy actually, it will help you connect. Let's say a shortcut is like a symbolic link. Okay, it's like a symbolic link that helps you access the data without actually copying it into a destination, without copying it into any other storage. It will help you still access the data. So over here, like I said, you are a part of the one lake, you have a one lake. Yes, data will be centralized, but it's not compulsory that you will be able to, I mean, it's not necessary you will be able to access that data. Okay. But if you want to access the data without actually copying the data into a specific lake house, okay, then the shortcut feature allows you to do that, allows you to access the data without actually copying it. So here, if you see when we work with the lakehouse, I will have to at least once load the data. But let's say I don't want to do that. I don't want to load the data. I don't want to copy the data once. I just want to connect to the source and I should be able to access the data. So that feature is called as a shortcut feature. Okay. So it is a shortcut feature. So shortcut here can be created of two types. One is the internal shortcut. That means you connect to the internal storages like lake houses, warehouses, event houses. And second is you create a external shortcut, which is going to connect to the external sources like Amazon S3, Amazon S3 compatible Dataverse, as your data lake Gen 2 also. Okay. So it is going to connect to these sources as well. So here, if I have to create a shortcut in Microsoft Fabric, shortcut can only be created on the lakehouse. Shortcut will only be created on the lakehouse. So you can create a shortcut either on the files over here or on the tables. Okay, you can create a shortcut either on the file or on the table. It doesn't matter. It could be created anywhere, but it will only be created over here. Okay, so if I have to create a shortcut, you can see I will come to the file section, hover over it, just click on the three dots. And can you see here you have this option of new shortcut? So can you see these are the sources to which you will just connect. So the minute you connect to these sources, you will see that data, you can use that data, but the actual data where it will lie, it will not lie in the lake house. It will not be in the lake house. It will lie at the data source only. So your shortcut is letting you to, yes, you can even preview the data, but the data will not be copied. It will not lie in your one lake. It will lie at the data source only. Just what will it do? It will just connect to the data source. It will not copy the data to your one lake, which is absolutely true. So it will write outside at in a data source. So here, whenever you have two workspaces, they share the one, they have the same one lake, but the workspaces access you have, it is different. So somebody will only have access to the product workspace. Somebody can only work on the pricing workspace. Okay. And then if they have to access the data internally, then without copying the data, then that is called as an internal shortcut. But if I have to connect to an external shortcut, sorry, external source, like Azure Data Lake, Gen 2, Amazon S3, Amazon S3 compatible, etc., you can, that shortcut is called as the external shortcut. So if you see here, you have these internal shortcuts which will connect to the internal sources, but you can also use these connectors to connect to the, or you can create a shortcut with these external sources also. So now over here, what we are going to do is I'm going to load the data from the from my local system over here. So if I have to load the data in the lakehouse, I can't load the data directly as a table. That option we don't have. Yes, I can create a shortcut. I can load the data from a shortcut, but it will be what table? It will be a delta table. The table that will be created will be a delta table. But if I have to load the data directly as a table once, if I want to copy the data once, okay, that is not possible in a table format, but I can definitely load it as a file. But that is what I told you, right? When I said this is like a data lake. This acts like a data lake. What do I mean by this? It is nothing but that you load the data as a data lake. So here, if I have to load the data, I'm going to use the local system to do that. So I'll click on these three dots. And if you click here, you have this option to upload. So I'm going to upload file. And I already have the data loaded. Click on upload. And it has uploaded the data. So you can see this file has been loaded. You can even preview this file. So it's a CSV file that we have loaded. Now we can convert this file to a delta table, which has become very easy. Okay, if I have to create a delta table out of this, it has become very easy. So over earlier, like in Databricks, we used to use Databricks, and Databricks is the one who has come up with the lakehouse concept, honestly. Okay. So, like I said, Databricks doesn't have its own storage. It has an abstraction layer, and on that abstraction layer, we have to mount the storage. So, if I have to create a delta table, it's a very long process. And in Databricks, the way we can read the data or extract the data, it is only through a data frame. Okay, it is only through a data frame. So what happens? First of all, I have to spend time in mounting the data, mounting the storage. Then from that storage, I need to give the file path and I need to load it to a data frame, which will read the data as a table. Okay. And then I have to write this file information, which is in the data frame, to a delta table. So this is how you would normally create a delta table. There is no direct way, okay, without coding, that gave me that opportunity. But here, Microsoft has really decided that we have to make people's life easy, okay, and they are doing that. Okay, so if I have to create a delta table, all I have to do is just come to this particular file, come to a specific file, just click on these three dots, and if you see here, you have the option of load to table. Load to table. So here I currently don't have any delta table created. So what it will do, it will create a new table. So if you click on it, you can see it detected the schema of the file, which is a CSV. And based on that, so we know that the first row is a header column. Okay. And after every comma, there's a value that comes. So it has predicted that. And based on that, it will create a delta table. So here it will take some time to create it. Yeah. And if you see here, the delta table with the same schema that is present in your CSV file gets created over here. Now, you can use this delta table and you can analyze the data using the SQL analytics endpoint. You can do data warehousing on this very data that you have. But keep in mind, if you have loaded a file, okay, if you have loaded a file and you have not converted that file to a delta table, you will not be able to do the analysis on the data. Okay, you can't use SQL to do the analysis. You will not be able to use SQL and analyze the data. So over here, first thing you have to do is you have to convert the delta table. Now we have a delta table of this file. So what we will do, we will load this we will use the SQL analytics endpoint to analyze or write SQL commands, okay, to this table. So currently, if you see, we are in which view? We are in the lakehouse view. We are in the lakehouse, right? We are currently in the lakehouse. If I click over here, it is going to take me to the lakehouse. Now I have to write SQL commands. I have to do SQL analysis, but the engine that will be used is going to still remain the Spark engine. Just It's just giving you the capability with that warehouse. Okay. So over here now, if I have to query the table that is there using SQL, so I can just switch the browser. I can switch the page, okay, from a Lakehouse view to a SQL view. So for that, we have the SQL Analytics endpoint that we have created. So here, I will click on the drop down and I will click on the SQL Analytics endpoint. And if you see now, over here, if you expand the schemas, and if you expand DBO, if you expand tables, you will see the sales table. But if you see, there is no triangle symbol. Okay, unlike the symbol here, if you see, this is the triangle symbol. So the triangle symbol indicates this is a delta table. Okay, this indicates it's a delta table. Guys, I'll be just back in 2 minutes. I'll just get some hot water. Okay, I'll just get some hot water and then we'll continue with this demo. Just 2 minutes, I'll be back. Yeah. So if you see here, the table that we have, it is a delta table. So the triangle at the right hand side bottom of the table shows that, okay, this is a delta table. Okay. So now if you go to the SQL Analytics endpoint, you will see that, okay, this is a different schema. Why? Because we are working on the data warehouse. We are no longer in the lakehouse view, right? So this on the right hand side indicates which view you are on. You can definitely change the view. So if you want to work with the data files or the folders, you can go to the lakehouse. But if you want to query that same data, but using SQL, you can come to the SQL Analytics endpoint. So here, let's do a simple analysis of the data. So here, I'll just click on the new SQL query and we will write a simple select statement. So a very important point here is that this particular endpoint that gets created, okay, this is a read-only endpoint. This particular endpoint is a read-only endpoint. Now, what do I mean by read-only endpoint? So this is the main difference between the SQL Analytics endpoint and the data warehouse in Microsoft Fabric. Okay. So the first, so I told you it is a read-only endpoint, right? So the first difference is, of course, that when we work with the lakehouse, we are adding semi-structured data, unstructured data, right? In the form of files only we can load. So when we work on the SQL analytics endpoint, it is nothing but warehousing given on the lake, warehousing given on top of the data lake. And that combination is data lake house, correct? So over here, my business underlying logic, that is the data where actually it is stored or it is loaded. In what format it is loaded? It is loaded as a file format. And it's not a table, right? It's not a table in anywhere. So if I have to update anything over here, that is not possible using the SQL analytics endpoint. That is why it is called as a read-only endpoint. You will perform only simple reading operations using the select statement, but you can't use DML, DDL commands over here. But that is not the case when you create a warehouse and not a SQL analytics endpoint. When you create a warehouse, in there, yes, you can update, you can insert values, okay, you can modify that table, but that is not the case in the SQL analytics endpoint. So that is the difference between a SQL analytics endpoint and a warehouse in Microsoft Fabric. Of course, in warehouse, when you work, the data is more structured. You can create your own tables, you can load in your own tables, create a fact table, dimension table, right? So that is possible. But if you have to go for on that same file, if you want SQL capabilities, you want to analyze the data using SQL, this thing, then you will have to use the SQL analytics endpoint. So this is similar to the serverless pool that we discussed in the morning. So serverless is a SQL pool only, but what does it do? It helps you analyze the data that is stored in the Azure Data Lake Gen 2, because the storage where all the data gets mounted in the Synapse service is your data lake. So if you have to query the files that you store in the data lake, whether it's a PADKey file, JSON file, or a CSV file, you can do that. Why you could do it? Because you have this serverless SQL pool which is built in. You can use that. But here it uses the Spark engine. Doesn't use the SQL server pool. Okay. But here we can definitely do some simple reading analysis. So let's just see how to do that. So I write a simple select statement. So here we are going to do a simple group by operation, and I am going to group the data, okay, item wise. I'm going to find out the total quantity sold, total revenue that is generated item wise. So I'll say item sum. So we all know that whenever we use a group by statement or we are doing grouping of the table, grouping means you're filtering the data. And whenever you do the grouping, you always have to give some aggregation function, right? So over here, that's what I'm doing. I'll use quantity multiplied by unit price from the table sales and mention the grouping condition. So I'll group it according to the item and I will order it. So I'll say order by revenue in a descending manner. And I'll just click on. So here it will do a item wise total of quantity multiplied by unit price, and it will give that column alias, which is called as revenue, and it will group it. And but or how will it order? It will order it according to the revenue, that is from the in a descending manner, highest to lowest, right? So this is how you can write a simple select statement, use select commands to query the data in the data warehouse, I mean in the data lake, but using the SQL capabilities. Now let's say you don't know how to write SQL or don't know how to work with Python. Okay. So if you have to work with Python language, you want to use this particular file and you want to analyze the data using Python. So here you can see you have this option of notebook, or you can also create a notebook here, and you can use this notebook to write Python code. So over here, we need to attach it. We need to attach this notebook with a source from where data needs to come, right? We need to mount the data here. From where is it exactly? Because we can have multiple sources, multiple lake houses created. So we want to specify which source are you supposed to take. So if I have to do that, I'll just click on the add items. I'll say use existing data sources, and I'll select this lake house that we have created and connect this source to the notebook, or attach the source to the notebook. Okay. Sorry, guys, just having some water. So over here, let's say you want to read the data, you want to extract the data. So like I said, this is the Spark engine that we are using. So on a Spark engine, if I have to read and I'm using the notebook to perform the analysis, okay, I will need to read the data in the data frame. Okay, I will have to read the data in the data frame. So over here, if I have to read the data, it's very easy. Just go to the workspace, I mean to the lakehouse that you have. Select the file. Again, come to that file. Just hover over that file and you can see there are these three dots. If you click on them and click on load to data, you will see that you get two options. One is a Spark, one is Spark and second is Pandas. Now, what does this mean? This will load the data. It will automatically detect the data path. It will automatically detect what is the format of the file. Okay. And it will load the data into the data frame. So here we can create two data frames. We all know there are two data frames. One is a pandas data frame and second is a Spark data frame. So what I will do, I will use the Spark data frame. Yes, there's a difference between the two data frames. So Spark data frame is generally used for when you have large volume of data, you have to manage large volume of data. So you go and you want faster results. Okay. Then in that scenario, you go with the Spark data frame. But let's say you don't want to use, you want to do basic Python related analytics. You know, your data is not that large, it is very small, and your analysis that you are doing is very small. Okay. So over here, you can go with then the pandas data frame. So that is the main difference between the Spark and the data frame. So I'll select the Spark data frame. And the minute I do that, if you see here, I automatically get a code generated, which is reading the format of the file. It is reading the path from where it is supposed to read the data. If you see, it is also getting that path. So you can see here, this is the file slash sales.csv. Okay. This is the path it is taking from where it is going to read the data and load it to the data frame. So over here, what is a data frame then? A data frame is nothing. Yeah. So over here now, what is a data frame? A data frame is nothing but it's like a table only. Okay. It is not a table, but layer. If you see the data is in the file format, right? And at times certain files like parquet files or binary file formats that are there, we can't read those files. We can't interpret the data inside those files. So in that scenario, okay, what does a data frame do then? It resembles the data as a table. So it's not a table, I would say, but it's something that looks like a table, is similar to a table or resembles like a table. So table has rows and columns. So that is what a data frame will have. Okay, so here, if you just execute this cell. So if I have to execute a cell in the notebook, there are two ways. One is I can press shift and enter. That is what I have done. And I can execute a cell in the notebook. So what is a notebook? A notebook is a editor. Okay, it is like an editor that you can use in order to edit your, I mean, write code, do analysis of the data. Okay, so one way is you press shift enter and you can execute this cell. The other way is you can press on the play button here, click on the play button, and you can execute the cell. Okay, so these are the two ways. And so you can see, you can also use the notebook to analyze the data. So you see the data over here, you get that information. You can just do some big data analysis. So for this, it uses Spark and Python language that is called as a PySpark language. You can see also over here, right? You can see that also over here. So this cell is currently a PySpark language cell. So you can just use some commands. If you know PySpark and you can do big data analysis, you can do that. So here you can print the schema of the data frame. You can do a count of values. So I'm just doing simple analysis. You can definitely do a lot of more things with it. So you can see these are the total number of records. You can definitely select certain columns. Like if you want to create a table. So let's see if it has a customer name. Yes, it has a customer name and email address. These are the two columns. So you can definitely create a or filter a data frame. So if I have to do that, you can do something like this. A customer name and email address. So you'll have to just be careful with the email with the column names. And you can now you can just display this data frame and you can execute this. So I press shift and enter and you can see it created a smaller data frame out of a bigger data frame. Okay, so these are some of the operations you can perform using the data in the lakehouse. You can use the lakehouse to analyze the data. You can also use now here, if you see, we have the delta table, right? So we can also use, so one way is you use the PySpark method. You can use the PySpark language and you can do the transformations or you can uh, perform analysis using the notebook. Yeah, generally PySpark is used, okay, because big data. So yes, PySpark is generally used. But when we talk about um, machine learning or AI, then in that you would require Python language more than PySpark. Of course, on using the Spark language also, you can create ML models or something, but it is not as efficient as you create using Python. So if you have to work with analysis, okay, in the analytical field, then knowing PySpark will be better than Python. Okay, but any which ways they are the same. The concept remains the same. What will change is the syntax. Otherwise, everything is the same. So currently, if you see here, we are working with the PySpark. We are using PySpark language. You can also use SQL on top of this and you can analyze the data. So over here, the operation that we did using the SQL commands, but that was on a relational schema. Over here, if you see, we have the delta table. So on the delta table also here, we can write queries. We can use SQL. Okay, so if I have to do that, there is one way in which, there are two ways in which I can do it actually. If you click on the drop down here for every cell, so if you see here, you have Scala, SQL, R, HTML. So you can use any of these APIs and you can definitely query the data. I mean, you can do the analysis using any language. Okay. Let's say you want to convert this cell directly to a SQL cell. You want to start working with SQL directly. So there is a magic method that we can use, which converts this cell from a PySpark cell to a SQL cell. Okay, so if I have to implement the magic, here how we do it, we just say percentage, and I'll say SQL. So if you see on the right hand side now, the language of the cell changes, the API of the cell will change, right? And now we can just write, we can use the same SQL commands from sales. So I have a sales table created. It will only work on delta tables, guys. If you think this will work on the files, no. Files, it will only use PySpark language. But if you have to work with SQL, you will need delta tables created. That means you will have to write, let's say you have made some transformations and you want to save those transformations as a delta table. So first you will have to do that. And then only you can use that delta table to write SQL commands. Okay, so over here, this acts like you can write, like I said, asset properties for the delta table you can perform. So that is what we are doing, and you can execute this. And you can see, of course, the table is going to be the same that was there. Now, coming back to the SQL analytics endpoint. So you could use Notebook. You can use the SQL analytics endpoint to analyze the data in the lakehouse. Another thing that you can use, okay, let's say you don't want to code, you don't know how to write a PySpark code or work with SQL, okay, and you want a low code, no code approach to transform the data that is present in the lakehouse. Like, let's say if you're comfortable with a tool called Power Query Editor, okay, and you want to make use of the Power Query Editor, so you can also do that on top of the Lakehouse. So if I have to make use of that, okay, I want a Power Query skill present on top of the data in the Lakehouse. I can simply come to this SQL tab, just click on this drop down, and can you see here you have this option called as New Visual Query. Now, what this will do, this will basically show you as visuals. Okay, this will be displayed to, or the query will be displayed to you as visuals. Basically, it is nothing but Power Query. Okay, so for that, we need to drag the table on this canvas. Which table do you want to convert, you want to transform? Using Power Query, you will have to specify that here. So here I will drag this table on this canvas and it will detect the source, database, and the table name. Now you can use the Power BI experience in the SQL analytics endpoint. So people who are not familiar with, or are data analysts who come with Power BI experience, they can definitely visualize the query and they can see. So they are like applied steps that you normally find in the Power Query editor. So it's the exact same thing, just the interface is a little different. So over here, I'll click on the plus button and I will choose certain columns. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep two columns. I don't want all the columns. So I'm going to go with the first two columns and I am going to just keep them. So I'm filtering the columns or removing the other columns that are present in the table and keeping the first two columns. So here I'll just click on OK. And now what it will do, it will remove all the other columns and keep the columns that you have selected. Okay. Now what we can do is we can do a group by. Okay, we can also perform a group by operation. So just click on the plus button and you can see here you have so many operations that you can perform. Okay, on top of the data. So it will filter out, transform, whatever you want to do. Similar to your Power Query, it is doing that over here. Exact same interface has been incorporated. Okay, so here we'll just do a simple group by and I'll select the first column. I'll give this column a name and I'll call this line items. So, like I said, along with a group by, we always have to give a aggregation function. So that's what I'll do. I'll just say sum, and I'll keep this column based on which it is supposed to, or on what it is supposed to perform the aggregation function, and create a new column. So this is the alias, and group it according to this column. So over here, just click on OK, and you will see the operation done, the group by function and group by operation done. Now you can also, so here if you see, we are visualizing the query. So that is why the name visual query. So you're visualizing every steps that you transform. You're kind of visualizing. So that is why this name is visual query. Okay. Now you can even create a report, a Power BI report. Okay. So if I have to do that, before that, you can even model the data. So if I have to model the data, because this is like a data warehouse, and when we talk about a data warehouse, okay, in data warehouse, like we have to design a data warehouse. And data warehouse has two tables. One is a fact table and second is a dimension table. So fact table is something that has only numeric values, and dimension table is something that consists of a descriptive information like product information, customer information, or date information. Okay, all those things become a dimension table, whereas a fact table will only have information in numbers. Okay, it will only be of numeric values, nothing else. So now if I have to model the data, and if when we model the data, okay, that is the fact table and the dimension tables when we model it. So there are two schemas that get created. One is a star schema and second is a snowflake schema, right? One is a star schema, second is a snowflake schema. So if I have to now model it, so for that we need to come to the model tab over here, model layouts it is called, not model tab. And you will see all the tables. So currently here we have only one table, which is the sales table. But at times when we see the data warehouse, when I show you, I'll tell you how I'll tell you how you can model the data, okay, over here. But currently we have only one table. Okay, these are query insights. So these tables are generally used whenever you want to monitor the queries that you write in the data warehouse. That is where these four queries that you see. So they are a part of the query insights, if you see here. And these are views. So these are the four views basically that you are seeing over here. So if you have to monitor your data warehouse, that time you make use of these views. Now you can create a Power BI report. As I said, you can visualize this data. So if I have to create a report, I'll switch to the reporting tab. And to that, I am going to I'm going to use the default semantic model. So if you recall, we had the third thing that was created by default, which was the semantic model, right? So I want to now use this model and I want to visualize the data. So here we will go to the SQL Analytics endpoint, click on the reporting tab, click on new report. So now what it will do, it is telling me that when you're creating this report, the data that will be used will be of the default semantic model. So if you want to create a custom model, guys, you can create one over here as well. So if you see, we have this option of new semantic model. So you can definitely customize the the semantic model, okay, in over here. So one place is you can do it here, select the tables that you get. So as of now, we have only one table, that is the sales table, but you can have multiple tables, right? In your data warehouse or in the lake house, you will have multiple files, so you will have to model it. So here you will see, you can either customize that model, not all the tables you might want to use, or you might want to use all the tables, so you have a default model also created. So here I'll just click on the new report, click on continue. And if you see here, the interface is the same as your Power BI desktop application or the Power BI. If you see, the interface is the same. And now you can use Power BI to visualize your data. Earlier, when we had to work with Power BI, we had to actually like create the semantic model in the Power BI desktop application. Reports and everything we still could create in the Power BI service, but the model, the semantic model earlier, or the security if I had to apply on that semantic model, all those things could only be possible in the in the Power BI desktop application. Okay, so now we can go ahead and visualize this data. So I'm taking the table view to the table view from the sales table. I'll take the item and I'll take the unit price. So it is creating a table of these two values. I'll take a clustered bar chart. So guys, I'm not going to explain the visuals here. We are not meeting here to learn about Power BI naturally. So that I will not be explaining these things. Just say item and I'll specify quantity. So you can create a report of your choice, or you can leave this to somebody else. Let's say a data analyst now wants to collaborate with you. So you can see integration becomes so easy, right? It will become so easy. So if you don't want to do the analysis, your data analyst is supposed to do that. You can just leave that. You have the data ready here, loaded as a semantic model. Just tell the analyst to use the semantic model and create a Power BI report, right? So now you can save this report. Just click on the save button on the right hand side corner and you can save it to any workspace that you want. So here I'll go with this and I'll give it a name. So I'll call this as item sales report and save this. So the report has been saved. So it's like a Power BI report only that gets saved. Now, if you go back to the workspace, you will see all the items in a single location. Whereas if you recall, we talked about the workspaces, different workspaces that get created, right? We had talked about it for Databricks. If I have to work with notebooks, there is a different interface for pipelines. There is a different interface. I mean, there's a different workspace that gets created. So why is that getting created? Because they are independent platforms. But that is not the case here. Everything is satisfied. So if you, I can create everything in one workspace. All my work that I'm doing, all the workloads that I'm managing, I can see that over here. And if you have observed, nowhere I created a compute, but still I was getting the output. Nowhere I created, anywhere I didn't create a compute. When we worked with the SQL analytics endpoint, when we worked on the report, we worked on the notebook. Nowhere I had to create a compute. So you can see the minute you start working in the fabric, depending upon the workload, it will assign a compute. There is a compute naturally that will be created, but it's not something that you have to create, worry about it. Okay, sorry, create or worry about it. It is automatically created. So if you have to see what compute is created where, so for the data warehouse in Microsoft Fabric, the compute is serverless. Serverless meaning there is compute, of course, but it is not something you have to worry. It is something that is taken care by the Fabric or by the cloud service provider. So here it will be taken care by Azure or Microsoft. Okay. But if you want to still see the compute of the Spark engine, okay, so that you still have that flexibility over here that is still given. Yes, so everything will be it will be automatically scaled, but you can also do certain more configurations on top of it. So if you go to the workspace settings and if you come to the data engineering slash science, and if you see here, you have the Spark settings, and inside that there is a pool already created. So you can see there's a starter pool, which is a default pool. So it is automatically created the minute you assign capacity. So this thing is automatically created and there is a pool there. You can also create a pool. You can customize a pool. Okay, if it is not turned off for you, I mean, you can definitely create a pool and you can click on the new pool and you can create your pool of your choice. But you should have the access. You should be a workspace admin to do that. Okay, you should at least be a workspace admin to manage these workloads. Not workspace admin only, a member, a contributor, or a no member or a workspace admin. Okay, so these are the two roles, but you can still manage this. But I don't have to create a compute, it automatically gets created. So this starter pool, the minute I logged in, it was already created. Just that it was idle. It was sitting like that. So if you recall, when we executed the notebook, we got a notification of session started in 6 seconds or something like that. So what was it doing? It was just, enabling or the compute that was there. It was in a sleep mode. Okay, it was just telling now it is the time to be used, right? So that is why that notification we got, session started in so and so seconds. Okay. So now guys, let's take a break. And after the break, we will see two more demos. So one will be on the warehouse, which is very easy. And the second will be on the event house. So let's take a break and I will so I'll start the clock for 20 minutes. And like I said, guys, we will be completing the uh, webinar early because it's a Saturday and we all want to enjoy the rest of the evening. So I will be ending the session by 5 or 5:05. Okay, that is the max time. But here, let's take a break. And post the break, we have two demos, and then I will talk a little bit about the certification and where you can prepare from. Okay, all that details I will discuss after we complete the demo. So I'll just start the clock and I will see you all after the break. Guys, just a gentle reminder to everyone that please redeem the training achievement badge. So the link Ria has shared, it's a complimentary badge that we are giving, or you can call it as a participation certificate for this webinar. So we would just request you all to please kindly redeem the course achievement badge URL that is shared. Please use your personal ID to do it. And please don't forget to do it because it will show that you have the skill and you had attended this webinar. So just a request to everyone, if you haven't yet redeemed your training key, your course achievement badges, please do that as soon as possible because once you leave the meeting, okay, you will not be able to access the chat and you will not be able to redeem the badges. So just a request for everyone to kindly redeem it. Now, moving ahead, let's quickly look at a demo on the data warehouse and the event house. Okay, how can you do real-time analysis in Microsoft Fabric? And then we will be ending the session, as I said, we will be ending it early because it's a Saturday. I don't want to drag it unnecessarily till 6 o'clock. Okay, so let's see how to create a lake house, a data warehouse. So it's a little different. Like I said, we did a difference between the SQL analytics endpoint and we also talked about the warehouse. So if you want to work on a structured data, please use the data warehouse in order to analyze the data, use the SQL commands, okay, in order to do the analysis over here. So I'll just reshare the link with everyone so that you all can go and redeem your badges. So here, if I have to create a warehouse, very easy. Okay, very simple. Just come to this new item. And if you scroll down, you just search for the warehouse. Just give it a name. So I'm going to call this as webinar and just click on create. And you can see here, so whenever you create the warehouse also, like your lake house, where you had options to load the data. So here also, you have the options to load the data, various ways in which you can load the data. You can use the data flow Gen 2, that is a transformation tool. You can use a pipeline, you can use T-SQL, you can write T-SQL commands and you can load the data into the data warehouse. So you can definitely use that. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a data warehouse using some sample data. So let me just go ahead and I'll show you how to load the data using the T-SQL also. So we'll just see a sample demo on it. So I'll just click on the sample data. So what it will do, it will create a data warehouse using the sample data. So it's exactly the same thing as your SQL analytics endpoint. Just the schemas, just the data that you are working with is going to be different. Apart from that, there is nothing different as such in the data warehouse. It is more or less same. So T-SQL is nothing but SQL. It's just a name given by Microsoft. They have like in Oracle or other SQL databases that we have, we can write procedural language, right? We call it as a PL SQL. So Microsoft, instead of, they don't have a procedural language, but they have started calling it T-SQL. But in short, it is nothing but your SQL language only. So it's not at all different. So whatever commands you use on Oracle database or any other database, the same commands you can run on the SQL Server also. It's just a name given by Microsoft. Otherwise, it is not at all different. So now, so if you see your data has been loaded, so let's use some SQL command to load the data. So I can create tables, dimension table, or I can create a fact table using the T-SQL. So again, I'll use, if you see, the interface is the same, just that you can't switch between you can't switch the interface. So currently you're only in the warehouse, but if you had to work with Lakehouse or SQL Analytics endpoint, you can see that you could change the interface. So here you don't have that option. Okay. Now, if I have to query, or let's say you want to create a table, so it works the same way as your SQL commands. If you want to write, you can do that. So you just have to say select, and sorry, we have to create a table. So we can use the DCL statements, right? Control statements, the DDL, sorry, this is a DDL statement. So I'll say table and I'll give it a schema. So I'm going to create it in the DBO schema, which is the database schema, relational database schema that we have. And I'm going to create a dimension table with the name product. And let's quickly give it a schema. So that's what I'm doing here. So this is a primary key. So that is why I'm adding a constraint of not null. And I'm just giving the schema over here. I'll call this as product name. So just a schema that I am giving, I'll use decimal and I'll call this as five, I think 5 digits and 2 decimal places. And you can just execute it. So over here, I'll just commit. So I'll just run this particular set of commands. So by default, it is going to start the execution from line number 1 and just click on the run button and it will create a table. So as of now, we have just created the schema, right? We have just given it a definition. We have not added any data or inserted any data to this. So if you see here, you get this table created. Then you can also insert certain values. So I'll use the command insert into and the table name. And I will quickly enter the values. So we'll go according to the schema. Just copy this and quickly insert other values. So only 3 values I'm going to insert and show it to you. Okay. Accessories only. I'll just change this. So now I'll just execute these commands. So it's a simple insert command that I have used. So if you're not able to redeem the badge, okay, you can use your other device, okay, um, to redeem the badge. That is not a problem. So just try using your mobile. Probably from your laptop, you might have some block. I mean, some sites will be blocked. So you can just use your mobile and you will have to create a Microsoft account, guys. You will have to create a Outlook or a Hotmail ID you will have to use, or you can use your Gmail ID also, and you can redeem the badges. So over here, by default, okay, the execution starts from line number 1. So it's exactly like your SSMS if you worked on SQL Server Management Studio. So it is exactly like that. Okay, it's the exact same interface. Okay, but here by default, it is going to execute from line number 1. I don't want that. So here I'll just click on the run button and it will execute from line number 11, as you see. Now we need to check whether the data has been loaded or not. So I'll just run a simple reading statement. And I'll just run this. And you should see that the data has been loaded, right? The data has been loaded. So this is how you can work with a data warehouse. It is very easy. Okay, it's very simple, straightforward. It's not at all difficult. You can also model your data over here. You can definitely model your data. So let me just do a refresh. You can create a star schema, snowflake schema by using the model layout. So it's exactly like your SQL Analytics endpoint, just that the data that you're working on will be different. So over here, we can definitely model the data. You can create a star schema, snowflake schema. So if you have to do that, so let's say I'll take 4 tables over here. So I'm going to take this. So you don't have to extract data from one lake. Any specific data you can't, but because this data will be stored in the one lake that is there in the data warehouse. Okay, so you can't extract anything specific over here because the schema is different if you see. Okay, but you can definitely ingest from the pipeline or the data flow, but you can't get it from the one lake. That is not possible. Take the geography table. Take the trip table, and I'll take the weather table. So here I'm going to create a star schema very quickly between these 4 tables that I have. Okay, I'm going to link. Now, when we create a schema, that means we are linking the fact table and the dimension table together, right? And that is how we create a schema. So that schema can be arranged, or the design can be like in the form of a star, or it could be like a snowflake. Okay, so that is how the schema looks like. So you can do that also over here. So if I have to create relationships, so it's very easy. You just have to select the common columns between the tables. So over here, if you see, between the date table and the trip table, we have the date ID, which is common. So what you will do, I'll just drag this and connect this to the common column. Okay. So over here, you can see it automatically detects a relationship. So I don't want, yes, schema is not built with foreign keys or this thing. Relationships are built between the foreign keys and the primary key. So if you see here in the date table, date ID is the primary key, but this very key will be the foreign key in the trip table. So here, as of now, if you see, the cardinality is many is to one. Okay. And over here, I can change the cardinality. So I want one instance. So cardinality means the number of instances of one entity being linked to the number of instances in the other entity. Okay, that is what it means over here. So I want only one instance of the date table being linked to multiple instances of the other table. So yes, I will share the notes that I have created here. If okay, I'll do that once I complete the session. So here you can see a relationship has been created. So schema is not the relationship. The schema is something like this, which will look like this. When schema is basically like how you arrange your tables. Sorry. So schema is basically arrangement of the tables, how you design the table. Okay, it basically talks about that. Whereas a relationship is nothing but how you link the two tables together, how you link the two tables. So here we have the star schema. This is the snowflake schema. This is how the star schema looks like. And this is the snowflake schema. So it looks like a snowflake schema. So dimension tables, if they are further normalized, okay, then they are called as a snowflake schema. Just imagine star being, no, I mean the dimension tables that are there, if they're further divided, normalized meaning further divided, then that is called as the snowflake schema. And this is the star schema. So you can, when you talk about designing a data warehouse, okay, this is how it is done. So over here, we are trying to create a star schema. Now you can link the geography table with the trip table. So here we have the common column, that is the geography ID with the drop of geography ID. So again, do the same thing, just drag this and connect it to the common column. So again, it will detect some cardinality. You can make changes to the cardinality. Just make it 1:many and save it. The same thing you can do with the weather table. So here I'm going to go with the geography ID only. I'm not going to use anything else. And again, I'll change the cardinality from 1:many and save the relationship. So this is how you can relate and create or model the data that is there in your warehouse. Now, whenever you create the warehouse also, if you see by default, there is a semantic model that is given over here. Okay, it comes like whenever you create a lake house or you create a warehouse, these things get created, semantic model, so that you can use it directly for visualization. You don't spend time in creating another model. You can just use, yes, you can use DAX. Definitely, you can write DAX functions. Okay, so you will have to go to that model. But in the warehouse or in the default semantic model, okay, if I talk about the default semantic model, there you can't write DAX measures. You will have to create a custom semantic model. If you create a custom semantic model by coming here, clicking on new semantic model, so I'll quickly create one and I'll call this as taxi revenue. I'm just giving some random name and I'll select 4 tables. So I'll go with the geography table, I'll go with the date table, I'll go with the trip and the weather table. Just click on confirm. So if we talk about creating a semantic model, so it's basically you will have to understand the warehousing concepts. Okay, when we talk about schema and when you talk about designing a data warehouse, okay, there are 2 schemas that are created. That is either a star schema or a snowflake schema. So generally, data we know it cannot be stored in one table. It has to be normalized, correct? So when you have a star schema, so sadly, we are running out of time. Otherwise, I would have explained this, but you will have to read a little bit about that. But why do we need schemas? Because they improve the data consistency and the data, I would say, performance of a data warehouse. Okay, so it is because it's a lot in depth. So I will not be able to cover in time, and we still have one more demo to show. So that is, I'll just tell you in brief. So if I have to talk about performance and have to improve on the performance. So these schemas generally help us in improving the performance and managing the tables in the data warehouse. So in the data warehouse, you are going to get two types of table. One is a fact table and dimension table. So how you organize them, that is called as schema. And the way you organize it, your data warehouse performance improves. Okay, so that is what is called as a schema. Like that is nothing but in simple terms, designing. Okay, so over here, if you see, I've created a custom semantic model. Now to this model, I can add measures, I can add, you can see if I'm currently in the viewing mode, but if you go to the editing mode, you can definitely add measures, calculations, DAX calculations you can perform. You can see here, you can manage the security, but you will have to create a custom model. On the default model, you don't have that option. Okay, on the default semantic model, if you see, if you try to open the model and if you want to try, even if you go to the model layouts, you don't have any option to add a measure. Okay, there is no option to add a measure anywhere. Okay, so this is not possible in the default model, but in the custom semantic model, you can do that. So over here, we saw how to work with a lakehouse. We saw how to work with a warehouse. Okay, so these were like data that was it was stored in some table, or it was already present, or we created the table, or we loaded the data into the lakehouse using our local system, right? Now data can come in from real-time sources. We need to process the data in real time also, right? So if I have to do that, okay, we will be using certain components that are there. So over here, let's understand how to work with the real-time intelligence in Microsoft Fabric, or if I have to perform real-time analytics. Okay, let's just see how to do that. So over here, in order to work with real-time or do real-time intelligence or analysis, Microsoft Fabric has created a different hub for it, which they called it as the real-time hub. So if you see here on the left-hand side and you click on the real-time option, you have a different hub that is there where all your data sources, because over here, the data that is going to come in, it's not going to be static, it's going to be incoming in real time. It could be structured data, it could be semi-structured data, it could be unstructured data, doesn't matter. But the processing or the data that is getting ingested is coming in real time, and you have to analyze the data immediately, correct? So over here, they have created a different hub to manage all the data that you are getting, the data streams that come from real-time devices over here. Okay, so if I have to create any source from where data is generated, I can come to this real time. Okay, so as of now, I don't have any IoT device that is there from where I'm ingesting the data. So I'm going to use some sample data to show how you can perform, okay, data real-time analysis on Fabric. So over here, I'm going to connect to a data source, which is going to be a real-time source. So here I have two sample scenarios. One is bicycle rentals, and second is about the stock market. So here I'm going to use the stock market data. We all know stock market data keeps on changing, right? So I'm going to connect to that source. I'm going to use the sample data, and I'm going to rename this particular event or this source, and I'm going to call this source as stock, and I'm going to rename the event stream. Now, what is an event stream? I'll explain to you all. So, like I said, there are people who are non-technical people, right? And they still want to work with data. They want to analyze the data. They want to ingest the data. So we know that data pipelines are something that is used, okay, for so we know data pipelines is something that is used for ingesting the data with low code, no code approach, right? That is why, that is what is basically used for non-technical people, if they want to still ingest the data, transform the data, right? So they will do what they will not understand coding, right? They will understand or the SQL language. They will understand the connectors presented to them in a simple manner. So if I have to ingest data from real-time sources and do real-time analysis, okay, from I have to decide a source and a destination where the real-time data needs to be ingested, okay, then that particular approach in the real-time analysis is called as the event stream. So event stream is basically like your low code, no code approach that you would take, okay, in order to ingest the data from real-time devices to a destination. So it will give you that canvas, like a pipeline sort of a thing, where you can ingest the data. So here what we are doing, that we are ingesting the data from this stock market source that we have, and we are going to make use of the event stream to load it at a destination, okay, to sync all the data in a particular destination. Okay. Also, one more thing, guys. My colleague Ria has shared a feedback form in the chat. So I would like all of you all to please give us your honest feedback. And please do keep in mind this feedback is really valuable to us. Okay. It will help us improve the future sessions that we are taking, that we will be conducting. And it will really give me an insight as to how well I can conduct the webinar later or when we do that. Okay. Another session if we have to do. So just a request, it will just take 2 minutes to give us your feedback. Please do that. Okay. While I'm explaining, you can definitely fill out the form. Also give us a Google review, guys. Please do not forget the support. We put in a lot of efforts to conduct these webinars. Okay. And it is, and you all know you are coming on a Saturday. We are also working on a Saturday. People don't like to work on weekends, but we are still here. So please, I would request if you could appreciate that. Okay. Even you are sitting and listening to me, it's not an easy job. Okay. So I do understand I've been on the other side of the screen as well. So just a request to everyone, if you could give us your feedback, it would be really, really great. Okay. Now continuing with this demo. So here we are using the source. We are getting the data from the source and we are using event stream to ingest the data into a destination. So as of now, we haven't configured the destination. Okay. So I'll just click on the connect button and it is going to create an event stream. So it has created an event stream. We'll just click on the finish button. And now if you go to the workspace, you will see an event stream that is created and stored in this very workspace. So here I'm just going to click on this event stream and you will see like a pipeline sort of a thing has been created. So the source is connected. The event stream will extract the data from the source and now it will ingest it or load it to a destination. So here we will need to create a destination to do that. So if I have to load the data, the incoming data, the streaming data, and I have to load it to a destination, in the real-time analysis, we can use a component which is called as the event house. Now, what is an event house? An event house is nothing but like a management tool where all the data that is coming from these sources is streaming will be stored, okay? And the event house will have two things inside it. One is the KQL database, and second is the KQL query set. So now, when we have to perform analysis on the real-time data, okay, it is going to be a little different from the batch data or batch processing that we are doing. Okay. So if I have to do the analysis, I have to question the data that is coming in streams, right? So there is a language that has been developed by a scientist called as Cousteau. Okay. He came up with a very different language. It's similar to SQL, no doubt about that. It's also like SQL is a declarative language, and so is KQL. There are lots of statements, syntaxes that are similar to the SQL language. Okay. But KQL is much more efficient when we have to work with the streaming data. Okay. And we want to do analysis on the streaming data. It is called as KQL, that is Custo Query Language. So if I have to query the data that is coming from these sources, from these streams, that is when we use this language. So over here, when we create a event house, so event house, just think of it as a single or a management tool that is used. Okay. So yeah, it is specifically built for real-time analysis only. So just think of event house like how there is an event company who manages the events, right? So whatever data is getting loaded, the data that is coming in from these streams, okay, if it has to be managed, it is done by the event house. Okay, and within the event house, you will find a lot of databases you can create. So the database that gets created is called as the KQL database. Why KQL? Because you will be questioning the data inside that database using the KQL command. Okay, and now when you're writing these KQL commands, okay, so what I'll do is let's just create an event house, and then I'll explain the next terminology that is involved in real-time analytics. So over here, we have the source. Now we need to configure the destination. So I'll click on the edit tab because I have to add a destination, correct? So currently I don't have a destination created. I will create one. So I'll just click on this and tell, okay, where do I want to load the data? So I want to load it into the event house, and I'll give it a name. So I'll call this as stop destination. Now I'll select the workspace I wanted to create this. So I'll select the webinar and I'll give it a name. So I'll call this as stop EH. And now within that, we need to create, oh, sorry, we'll have to create one. I'm so sorry. I forgot one step. We will have to create a event house here first. Welcome to the new item. And I'll select the event house. I'll give it a name, stock EH. And by default, when we create an event house, okay, a KQL database with the same name will be created inside. So if you see here, okay, this is the default KQL database that will be created. And now if I have to do the analysis or the data that comes in from the event stream, it will be added over here. It will be loaded in this particular database. Now we need to configure this destination. And if I have to do that, I'll again click on the edit button and I will add a destination. That is the event house. I'll give it a name. So I'll call this as stock destination. Select the workspace. So it is in this workspace that we have created the event house. Select the event house. Now you can see over here, I'm getting it. I'll also get the KQL database with the same name. Now there is no table that we have created where the data needs to be ingested. Right? So we need to select or we need to create a new table over here. So I'll just click on create new and I'll call this table as the stock table. Okay, I'll call this table as the stock table and rest all the things I am going to keep it as it is and just click on the save button. Now, if you see there is an error, why? Because we have to load the data into the destination. So we just need to connect the event stream because the event stream will pick up data from the stock source and load it to the destination. Now we need to tell the destination that the data is coming from the event stream. So I will go back to my database Okay, I'll come to the database, and currently if you see, there is no data that is getting ingested. Why? Because we haven't configured or we haven't told the destination that you are supposed to accept the data or ingest the data from the event stream. So we need to do that over here. So I'll just click on the get data button, and I'll select event stream as the source. And we already have an event stream that is created. Just click on the just click on the existing event stream. And over here, um, 1 second. I'll just quickly create a table. So we'll do that over here. I actually missed a step, so it's okay. Just click on next. And it is doing some schema mapping over here. So if you see, this is the data that is coming in. So it has mapped the data and it has loaded it. We just have to click on the finish button. And one final time, it will ingest the data into your KQL database. So it has done that. Once that is done, just click on the close button and you will now see some data getting ingested into the database. Or if you have to work with, yeah, you do require these two skills. Okay, if you have to work with the data in the so the data is coming in to the data, I mean, in the KQL database. So now we can just analyze the data. We can analyze the data using the KQL language. So over here, if I have to do an analysis, okay, we can just go to the table. Just a minute, guys. Yeah. So over here, you can see some data is being ingested. Now you can just analyze this data that is coming into this table. So it's very easy. We will be using the KQL language. So you just come to the table, to that specific table. Just click on these three dots. And can you see here, you have the option of query with code. Okay. And you have lots of initial query options that you can use. Okay. In order to query the data. So here I will go with the first option, that is show any 100 records. So if you see, it will, so it's a little different from the SQL language that we have. Okay. And you can see over here, it is, if you see the tab that is selected, it is called as the query set. Now, what is this query set? So basically, when you are writing or you are analyzing the data in the KQL database on top of the table, okay, you are writing queries to analyze that, correct? So if I have to do the analysis of the data, and we are writing multiple queries to do that, right? We'll be writing query after query after query, and those queries will depend on what kind of analysis you are doing. Okay. So what does the query set do? It kind of compiles a set of queries that you are implementing or you're using for data analysis. Okay. You are kind of creating a compilation, like how you take notes for, or I use this whiteboard to make notes for today's webinar. Similarly, whatever queries you are writing to the database, if you want to make a note of them, then that is called, it's like your notepad. Okay, but just it will comprise of the queries that you write. So this is called as a query set, because it will have a set of queries that you're using to analyze the data. Now let's say over here, you want to retrieve, because here it's a stock data, right? It is working with the stock data. Now let's say I want to retrieve the average price for each stock that was there in the last 5 minutes. What was the average price of every stock in the last 5 minutes? So if I want to analyze that, we can do it over here. So I'll just select the stock table. I will give it a condition. So you can use the where clause similar to your SQL statement, right? And over here, I'll give the column that is time. And I'll say, because here we have to use, I'm giving a time frame of greater than 5. So I'll use a function called as AGO, which will take the time span. Okay, it will take the time span. So AGO will just mention the window, I can say, like after every 5 minutes, it will calculate the average stock prices that are there. So over here, I can make use of, if I have to now, like I said, I want to find out the average price of the stocks that is there. Okay, and I want to group it according to it. So if I have to do a grouping operation, for that we use the summarize method, like group by we have. Okay, instead of that, you can use the summarize KQL statement. So I'll say summarize. Now I want to calculate the average price. So for that, I am creating an alias. So this will be the column name, right? How in SQL we use as to give a column name, because otherwise it will give a different column name. But if you want to map it to a specific column name, what do? You use the average price, right? So over here, I'll say AVG, and I want to give this column, that is the bid price. So every time you use the KQL language and you are passing any column, you need to map that data type to that column, because it does not detect the data type. That is a drawback in the KQL. So you will have to specifically write this. So I'll pass the bid price column. So it will map the bid price column to a decimal value and then take the average of that. And we want to group it according to the symbol. So that's what I'm doing over here. And then I will project. So project is like the select statement, and select we pass the columns. So it's doing that only. It's just going to project it to these two particular columns. Just execute this. Okay, so it will create a table over here. Now you can definitely add, or you can definitely visualize this particular data Okay, the query that you have over here, you can definitely create a dashboard. Okay, you will have to learn a little bit of the KQL language if you have to work with real-time analysis in Fabric. So you will have to learn KQL in order to work with real-time analysis. You can also use select. I mean, you can use SQL also. So if you have to make use of SQL, you will have to use this, and you can definitely write select statements also. But if you have to work with real-time data, then it is better that you use the KQL command. So over here, now I can visualize this. Yes, it is not used by everyone. It is something that Microsoft has for itself. Okay, it's not used by everyone. It is specific to Microsoft services only. So it's not used because it's in the yeah, it's not used all across the industry, only on Microsoft services. So if you have to work with Azure Data Explorer or you have to work with the real-time intelligence in Fabric, then you will have to use the KQL language. Now we can visualize this data and create a dashboard out of it, which is very easy. So you just have to select the query. Okay, you wherever you have to visualize this, it will only be done through the queries that are there. So here we are just going to select this query and I'm going to pin it to the dashboard. And to this dashboard, so I don't have a dashboard created over here. So we'll have to create. So this will be a real-time dashboard that we are creating. Okay, and I'm going to call this as stock dashboard. And I'm going to give it a title because here we are calculating the average prices. So I'm going to call this as average prices. And I'm going to create the dashboard. So if you see here, it has created a dashboard with the name stock dashboard. Okay, and now you can see a visual has been added. So currently we are in the viewing mode. We want to edit. Let's say you don't want it to be shown in a column chart. You don't want to see this data in a column chart. Let's say you want it in a line chart or in a or let's say this is currently in a table chart. I'm sorry, but let's say you want to see this in a column chart. So the first thing that you will have to do is you will have to change the view. That is, you will have to switch to the editing view. Now you want to edit this visual from a table view to table chart to a column chart. So I'll click on the edit button and you can see this query that has come in. So we are just going to change it to column chart, and rest of the things I am going to keep it as it is. Now we will just capture the changes that we have made. So for that, we need to click on the apply changes. And you can see here, you're getting the data in a column chart, right? And you can see this data will keep on refreshing. You can see you are getting the time also over here. Okay, it is specifying that time over here. Now you can also create an alert. Let's say you want to, get a trigger. Let's say, for example, over here, the average stock prices have increased, let's say, by 100, and you want an alert for it or you want a trigger for it. So you can definitely create an alert or you can set a trigger, which will tell you for like, it will give you an alert or for a specific event, and you decide what that event you want. So here, like I said, if the stock prices go above or the average stock prices go above 100, so I want an email sent to me. Okay, I want an alert created. I want to get some name. I want to see the data. So over here, I can create an alert. So I'll just select this. I'll select the average prices. And I will say every 5 minutes, check, run this query that is running. So I told you when we created this dashboard, okay, we want the query, only on the query we can visualize it. So run this query every 5 minutes. And whenever you find that the average price has increased, okay, it has increased by a certain value. So specify that value here, which is 100, send an alert to me. Okay, create an item. So here it will create an item and I'll call this as stock activator. It will create an item and it will give you an alert on your email. So just create that. And whenever the stock prices or the average stock prices go above 100, you will get a notification in your email. It will keep running that query every 5 minutes. Okay. And you can also go to the activator tab and you can analyze whether it's working or it's doing its action or not. So you can see it has been created, alert has been created, and you can just save the dashboard and go to your workspace, and you can see here an alert has been created. So this particular no, you can't add multiple alerts over here. Okay, you can't add multiple alerts. You will have to add one alert at a time, or you will have to pin different visuals. You will have to add in more visuals, and based on that, you will have to then you can create multiple alerts if you want. Okay, and those settings you can definitely decide how you want to do it. So this is what basically is in the DP 700 certification that we saw. Okay, so this basically consists of the data engineering tools that will be required. Um, so all the tools on Fabric related to the data engineer is covered in this particular certification. Okay, so this certification, guys, is a associate level certificate. Okay, it will only focus on the modules that we discussed. Nothing apart from that will be added in your certification. So it's an associate level certification. So this, I'll just share the material from where you can prepare, you can study. Okay, I'll just do that. So sorry, guys, I will not be able to continue the session now even further because I'm just talking for a long time. So it's just I'm straining my voice a lot, and I've been doing this for the entire week. So we will be ending the session soon, like I said. Okay. But I'll just tell you all about where you can prepare for this certification, study for this certification. So what you have to do is you just have to search for the DP 700 Learn modules. Okay. And if you come here, just click on this link. So I'll share this link with you all in the chat. So we have seen more majority of the modules today. Like I said, we can't complete. It's a 4-day training, which I have to say. So here I couldn't complete all the modules naturally, but whatever is important, we have covered. And you can come here and you can study from these links. So this is the study material. You can also schedule the exam in case you want to give the exam after you've completed reading about it and etc. So you can definitely come here and you can schedule the exam. So you can just search for the cost. Okay, so this will roughly come to 5,000 rupees that are there. So this particular certification is not an open book test. It is a proctored exam. There will be, so the passing marks is 700 out of 1,000. Okay, there is no negative marking. There will be no practically, you will not have to practically implement anything. Okay, it is all going to be MCQ based. What they will do is they will just give you like a big scenario. So there will be a lot of scenario based questions that will be there in this particular exam, but you will not find any what we say, practical questions, no negative marking. Okay, it is going to be a 100-minute exam. If you see, okay, that is the duration of the exam. So, and also, guys, if you schedule the exam, just ensure that you have good bandwidth to give the exam, study properly because the exam is not cheap. It's 5,000 rupees. And schedule the exam. Like if you have to cancel the exam or reschedule the exam, just do it 24 hours before the exam. Otherwise, you will be charged for it and you say, okay, you're not prepared or anything. Okay, so you will lose out on those 5,000 and you have not even studied. So study well and give the exam. Okay, do not be in a rush or in a hurry to complete give the exam. Study well, and if you, in case you feel that you're not ready, you can just reschedule the exam or cancel the exam, but you will have to do it 24 hours before your scheduled time. Okay, so if you have scheduled the exam for 4:15 on 15th of June, I'm just giving an example. So before that, you will have to reschedule. We don't, so we are Microsoft Gold partners. So if you want any exam vouchers or anything, just contact the numbers given above. Contact Shub, contact Ria. They will help you with the same. Okay, they will help you with any vouchers that we have. So just contact that team and they will help you with it. Okay, so this is it, guys. I'm so sorry I can't continue anymore. I'm just straining a lot of things. So if you want any vouchers or anything, just contact Shubh and his team. So Ria is a part of his team. Vivek is also a part of his team. So you can definitely contact them and you can get in touch for any exam vouchers that are there. You can just get in touch with them. So this is it, guys. Thank you so much for attending um, the session, and I hope it was informative. You could understand at least. So, guys, this is just the beginning in fabric. There is lots of things that you are still to explore. So, just all the best to everyone. And please, if you have any doubts, you can just get in touch with Shubh and his team. You can get in touch with Ria also. They will definitely they will definitely help you with the process. Okay, so thank you everyone. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. And we will see, I'll see any other webinar that I'll be conducting. I'll see you all over there. So thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah. Hello, ma'am. Also, before
Yeah, yeah.
signing off, I would like to say that thank you so much for your valuable insights on your expertise, and also to everyone that we will be coming with more such sessions. So, follow us on all the social media platforms to be updated. And thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Ria and team, for conducting this. And thank you everyone for attending the session. So you can drop off if you have no questions and have a great evening. Thank you.